today's meeting. Deacon, Tittel, and others have been, ever since the storm, looking at our emergency management procedures and thinking of how we did and what we ought to be able to do better in the future. And I asked Deacon to put all that together and present it to this group, and we'll see where all that goes from there. Certainly there will be budget and operational outcomes from all of that, but wanted to give Deacon that opportunity to share it with a wider group. Before we do that, are there announcements for the good of the group or questions that we ought to take up? No? Everything good? All right, Deacon. And we are going to record it, and I'm not really sure what we'll do with the recording of it. Depend on how good you do. No pressure.
So it's okay to heckle him now.
Yeah, right. See how good he does. And we're just thinking that this might be information worthy of sharing somehow. So thank you, Deacon, for all your work on this.
Yes, sir. Morning, everyone. There'll be an interaction question, and if you have questions throughout this presentation, please feel free to ask over anything that I bring up and cover. A lot of this is feedback that was received from you at some point or another from post Harvey up until present time. I promise you, if you have questions, I probably won't have all the answers, but we will make note of it and try to get those answers back to you from there. So, what we're going to be talking about, looking at is, we're going to start off with a recap of Harvey. Pre-storm, kind of set the tone, set the timeline up, talk about during the storm, and talk about post-storm. We're going to discuss the after-action review. Anything that we have, any type of incident, any type of event that we do have in the city, we should always make sure that we do some type of after-action review, whether it be just by department or especially if it involves multiple departments within the city, that we come together, that we're able to express ourselves and be openly with one another without worried about hurting one's feelings or another's. Because, I mean, that's the only way we're going to be able to build. It's the only way we're going to be able to grow as a city and become stronger and better prepared. And we're also going to look at different areas of improvements. And then, how do we move forward from here? So, looking at Hurricane Harvey, back on August 13th, it became off the coast of Africa. Invest 91L was its first initial designation. Within 4 days, it moved just shy of the Caribbean islands, and it was actually given its first name, Tropical Storm Harvey, on the 17th of August. 2 days later, after it moved across the Caribbean islands into the Caribbean Sea, it downgraded to a tropical wave. And then 4 days later, after it moved across the Yucatan Peninsula to the Bay of Campeche, is when it got its first designation as a hurricane. So, 11 days from the 13th until it's in the Bay of Campeche. Now, we all know as it's in the Caribbean Sea, the spaghetti models are all over the place. And we really started watching the spaghetti models. I mean, I know I did personally, I'm sure you did personally because of our homes and work as well. But I think once it got close to the Yucatan Peninsula, I think a lot of the spaghetti models really took it to Brownsville and south. Like it was going to be more of a Mexico, Rainmaker, Mexico storm. Not very few of the models really predicted it to do exactly what it did and jar and actually start traveling north. As we see on the 23rd, it became a storm. The 24th was the hurricane. And then within 24 hours, it intensified from a Category 1 hurricane all the way to a Category 4 hurricane. Now, when you look at the timeline in which we were set up, maybe you figure Rockport, that's not a lot of time to really plan for, okay, Category 1 hurricane, you know, everybody may plan differently as far as at Category 1, we know the winds are up to a certain speed, we're going to get a little bit of rain, but go from a Category 1 to a Category 4 in 24 hours, that's a big difference. And then we see that it made landfall on the 25th on the Texas coast, it jogged back out into the Gulf, hovered over the southeast Texas, which we're all familiar with the results of that, before it finally dissipated on the 30th of August and made its final landfall near Cameron, Louisiana. Now, pre-storm on the 23rd of August, our city, we started making preparations. Department started preparing. Department started looking to see what needed to be done just in case this storm pulled a jargon to the north and really came toward us. It was decided on the 23rd to do a recall notification of all designated personnel, which the staff determined at that time who were going to be called back in if needed. On the 24th, the EOC activation went to a level 3, which is a state of readiness. And during this time frame, it's a little bit more concerned, concentrated efforts. We're trying to see what we need to do with the patterns of weather patterns have taken us, and what other actions do we need to take. Everybody was recalled in by 6 p.m. on Friday, August 25th, and it was at that point that the EOC went to a full-fledged activation of a level 1. Now, if we flip back on the 25th, when we're at a level 1, it's actually making landfall near Rockport. So we were already prepared, but we were taking those steps to where we didn't have personnel here any sooner than what needed to be here. So that way it gives you a little bit more time to prepare yourself at home. By the 6 p.m. on the 25th, the department's checklists were completed. A plan of action was being formulated within the EOC amongst the EOC staff and the city staff as well. And as we all know, everything happened pretty quickly. But ultimately, the plan had been put together and it looked like we had been planning this for quite some time. During the storm, we went to 2 operational periods, 2 12-hour operational periods. We started at 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. was one operational period, and the 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. was the next one. Also during the storm, we took the boots that were on the ground from Public Works, Fire, and Police, and we formulated task forces. We put individuals working together that typically don't work together on a normal day basis. And I can tell you just from my standpoint, it didn't matter what department those individuals work for. Bottom line is we all work for the city of Bellaire, and that's exactly what they showed out there on the ground. Police, Fire, and Public Works going out there, conducting rescues, making things happen, doing what they were tasked to do, and continuing to move forward. Plan was being formulated for each operational period. The EOC staff was continuously working on not only the current operational period in which they were in, but future and forward projecting. As we know, because the rain continued and continued quickly, that we were overwhelmed relatively fast. The incident that we had on hand was quickly beyond our means. The resources that we had, we were utilizing them, but we got to a point during the flood water that we had no extra resources. So we were having to reach out to the county to try to get more. We were having to look out at citizens, trying to acquire boats, trying to acquire jet skis. But bottom line is the crews never gave up. From the EOC staff out to the crews out in the field, never gave up, and they provided their best effort possible with the situation at hand. And the EOC staff stayed strong the entire time. Set the tone early, maintained the focus, even though we were overwhelmed at times in the EOC, even though the crews were overwhelmed, nobody let that show as far as when we were out there in the public, nobody let that show amongst the EOC, and maintained that tone throughout. And as we all know, our dispatch center accomplished a whole lot and really helped keep things streamlined and moving forward. So looking at Hurricane Harvey with the rain totals. As we know, Harvey hit, initial landfall was down here, but a lot of the rain was concentrated in this area here. We received a little, according to this map, roughly around 36 inches of rain during Harvey's time that spent in the city, its visit. But as you see, some areas on the east side of Houston, in the Chambers County, received anywhere between 40 to 50 inches of rain. And those are just the top 10 rainfall sites from Harvey. So this was really a 4-day span of Harvey's concentrated efforts. If you look at the 4-day peak rainfall frequency, the different shades of color, the lighter pink is a 0.05% to 0.02% exceedance probability of this type of rainfall occurring. So in the light pink area, that's about a 2,000 to a 5,000 year type flood, what they experience. In our area, the more darker pink, the more magenta, we're about a 5,000 to a 20,000 year flood. Now, I know you hear different variations, different people saying different things. And then the area that got the 40 plus inches of rain was about a 20,000 plus year type flood event. Doing the breakdown from Hurricane Harvey, and then this is a collection of rain over the 4 days for Harris County. Within the first hour, the county received 6.8 inches of rain. And as we all know, when Bellaire gets 3 to 4 inches of concentrated rain at one time, we know what starts. But 6 to 8 inches of rain is pretty significant. Within 2 hours, almost 12 inches of rain. Within 3, we're at almost 15, 6, and you can read the rest. But a significant amount from day 1, when it initially started, to the end of day 4. Now, taking that a step farther, let's compare Harvey's rainfall totals to Allison, to the tax day in October of 1994. Within the first 3 hours, Harvey had exceeded the most rainfall that Harris County has ever received than any other storm or rain event that we've had in Harris County. Now, Allison obviously dumped a lot more in the 6th hour, 12th hour, or even the first day compared, but then Harvey continued to rain and continued to exceed the max. Now, we all know what tax day was like. It was a good eye-opener for the city, what potentially could happen. We know what Allison was like, and then, we obviously know what Harvey was like. The flood of 94, that was, obviously another significant rain event. It affected a lot of the areas, but as you can see, tax day was the least amount in comparison to the other ones. But what it's showing is what we have to make sure we continue to be prepared for. We always think when it comes to hurricanes, it's about wind. Yeah, we're going to get rain. It's about lightning strikes and so forth. But as we saw with Harvey was a rainmaker, not necessarily a windmaker. So it's the different types of incidents that we could encounter. Nobody in the county was prepared for Harvey. Nobody could have been prepared for 40 inches of rain. And it was said that. You can have all the resources all day long, but a lot of the issues in Harris County dealt with staffing personnel. I know City of Houston didn't call in really a lot of extra. They just utilized what they had on hand. So when they were trying to call in people, they couldn't get anybody because everybody was flooded out or trapped in their own residence. But that was the common thing in Harris County, was a lack of resources. Or who gets the resources upon request? Because I know we send in multiple requests for different resources, and here the county's trying to figure out what area is the most critical need for those resources at the time. Now, Harris County was battling with the City of Houston as well for resources. And there's word on the street that all these resources that were going to the county were actually taken in by the City of Houston. So it's a constant battle. Little bitty old Bellaire, we're going to do everything that we can, and we're going to follow the process. We're going to put in the resources and requests as we need them. But understanding that getting them may not be as likely as other areas. The county looks at the county as a whole, and which is the most critical in that function, as far as the need. So post-storm, continued effort to get things back to an acceptable operational level. What was Bellaire like before the storm? That's what we were trying to get back to. Obviously, things were not going to get back to what we are used to calling normal, because nothing was normal, obviously, after Harvey. The storm affected a lot of citizens. It affected a lot of you. And that's the other thing that played a role was, here you are doing your job here in the city, but yet knowing at home what kind of damage you had or what kind of damage you didn't have. I use Russell as an example. He's got webcams at his house, and he's sitting there doing his job and constantly looking on his phone and looking at his house. The river is getting higher and higher, and he's kind of seeing it, but yet he's stuck here at work, and I don't mean that in a negative way, doing his job, but yet he knows what's going on, but some of you probably did not. But it's that mindset, being able to maintain that focus on what needed to be done. The EOC was discontinued to return to a level 4 on the 2nd of September. There was many days of continuous work, 24 hours the best that could be done. Granted, the nighttime operational periods, we were limited because of lighting, because of safety purposes. We were really limited, and in reality, at nighttime, the call levels actually dropped, which is a good thing because we didn't have a lot of people out. All in all, we had 71 operational periods during Hurricane Harvey. Now the first operational period started Friday, August 25th at 6 p.m. And the last operational period did not end until November 3rd. Because we continue doing operational periods, even after the brunt of all the operations are completed, with Public Works still doing debris pickup, we still have to file and conduct an operational period for that. It all goes back to reimbursement. It goes back to, the plan is still moving forward. So that's why we have 71 total operational periods. Obviously, September 2nd, we went back to a 24-hour type operational period. So every day that debris management was conducted was through a 24-hour operational period. Jobs outside of our everyday scope. We had people doing things that they don't do on a normal basis. Public works guys, and I commend them. I mean, those guys are great. I mean, they come in, you know, doing whatever they can do, taking care of their stuff, and they're getting asked to go ride on dump trucks to go help rescue people. That's not what they do on a normal day basis. I mean, they play in water a lot. You know, they take care of water, but not flood waters. You know, and we had, I mean, even law enforcement, they were out rescuing people. Fire department was out doing things. I mean, everybody was doing things. You had all of you. You wear your one cap today, doing your finance, doing HR, doing, you know, Parks and Rec, and the next day you're in the EOC taking care of feeding 70-something people, taking care of documentation. I mean, you know, not worried about necessarily the parks, worried about what we can do as a city to keep things going, moving forward. So a lot of people did jobs outside your everyday scope, and I commend you for that because it's hard to take that initial cap off and put a secondary cap on and start thinking in a different way, knowing what's going on out there. You know, what do my parks look like? What things do I need to be taken care of? But yet, you're trying to concentrate on feeding 70-something people, 100-something people. Public Works continued with debris management until November 3rd. It's just a rough estimated date. But I want to say that's pretty close, and y'all maybe continue to do some type of debris management now. But I think that was when Phase 3 was completed or somewhere in that time frame. But I mean, you know, the city looked like a disaster. I mean, it did. You go up and down Southdale areas, and it was unbelievable, the amount of damage, the amount of debris that was sitting there. And the city knew what we had on hand, knew exactly the type of project that was in front of them, but it didn't slow them down. They continued on, grabbing debris, removing it, knowing that we just grabbed that pile. 2 days later, there's more out front. It didn't make a difference. They knew what we had to do as a city, and they continued to do it. Finance continues to work for the time being. I mean, I've talked to Terrence, they're still working, and they'll continue to work for years. I think it was 5 years after Hurricane Ike before we actually seen any type of reimbursement from Ike. And Ike, we got spared at Ike because it traveled more east than it did toward us, like the initial projected path, but still, 5 years later. Now, it's a lot of, you know, we talk about paperwork, and we'll talk more on that, but there's a lot that goes into our job, making sure we do what we have to do in the early phases, so that way finance, Terrence, and Jim, and them can do their job in order to, on the back end of things, on top of their regular job, to make sure the city does get completely reimbursed. To me, the reimbursement is more of a reward and a benefit. I mean, it's not, we don't do all this for the money, but it's a reward and a benefit for the job that we've done to recoup the unexpected expense that the city puts forth in these types of situations. So in the after action review, we're going to look at 3 different areas: the departments, the city staff, and the city operations. Now, these comments that were made here were feedback that was reached out to the different departments and received. Myself and Chief Leal and several others worked to try to collect this feedback. So these are comments that were provided back to us from you and your staff. So you look at city departments, things that went good. Each department was prepared pre-storm, following their checklist. You know, everybody took care of the department, doing things that they needed to do, had to do, and I'm hoping from that, each department was able to make notes of what changes that might need to be made to their individual department checklist, or what we can be adding to our checklist in preparation for the next storm, the next hurricane, the next flood, that might change things a little bit. City staff, camaraderie for all employees, pre, during, and post, was great. I mean, it was crowded at the fire station, but it was good times at the fire station. And I don't mean crowded in a negative way, but I mean, that was really the hub because of all the construction and all that going on. It was nice having everybody there. You couldn't tell who worked for who because everybody was sitting down, eating together, cutting up, you know, during their downtime, just having a good time. There wasn't a lot of tension, which when you bring a lot of people like that together, especially in the situation at hand, especially with people losing their homes or things of that nature, can be very stressed out. They didn't show it, which might be a good thing, and then again, it might have been a bad thing. It might have been a good time for people to debrief a little bit amongst one another to try to help build. But the camaraderie across the board for all employees was great. The city stepped up, came together, and accomplished the unthinkable. Not just city staff, but our citizens as well. I mean, y'all showed the citizens what Bellaire is truly made of. You and your staff, what Bellaire is truly made of. I mean, they talk about the customer service, they talk about the city services that are provided. But when it came to Harvey, everybody went above and beyond. But because of the above and beyond, the appreciation that the citizens have, once they got, obviously the less effective ones were more up here than others, they come out of all different directions through donations. I mean, I guarantee we probably all could have gained 10, 15 plus pounds with all the sweets and cookies and whatever, everything else that they brought. But coming out to see, how can I help out? What can I do? We had citizens manning a donation booth. We had citizens during the deal bringing their own vehicle to help flood victims, boats. I mean, it happened. The city came together from both the employees and the citizens across the board to make Harvey, what Harvey, as negative as it was, really a positive. Staff came together, completed the data scope, and the most important one of it all, there was no loss of life and no loss or no injuries reported at all in Harvey. And that's remarkable. You have 30-something plus inches of rain, you got people jumping in chest-deep water, you know, into the unknown with cars, things of that, and nobody gets hurt, and definitely we don't lose any lives amongst the city. That's a big check mark and a big plus. Harris County, there was a total of 6 deaths in Harris County related to the flood. So you look at the widespread of flooding that occurred in Harris County area, and I mean, not that it's good to lose one, but and you only lose 6 with what everybody was impacted and affected by. That's still, I don't want to say a remarkable number because it's not good to lose any life, but it could have been a whole lot worse. ELC operations. ELC was activated for 8 days, a full activation, from the 25th of August to the 2nd of September. The ELC staff came together and at times was overwhelmed. When things were happening in the city, reports were being come back, the rain was continuing and didn't stop, and we didn't know when the end was going to come. ELC staff got overwhelmed, trying to think, okay, what do we do next? I mean, trying to plan for the future with still the unknown and what's going to happen tomorrow. Functionality was amazing, but of course, with anything, nothing's going to go perfect. We're always going to have our flaws. Maintain a sense of calmness with forward-looking perspective. And I think, like I said, it wasn't just the ELC staff, it was the crews as well. But having that sense of calmness really helps set the tone for the staff across the board, but more importantly, it helps set the tone out in the public with them. I mean, they're the ones that are losing their homes, when they lost their home, having damage, they go to bed with a little bit of rain, they wake up and they got water on the first floor of their house and making phone calls, trying to get out, trying to figure out what to do next. And everybody in the city is as calm as possible. So it helps put a calmness within the community as well, knowing, hey, we're going to be okay. We're going to get through this, we're going to get to where we need to go and be able to take the next step. Logistics stood out. I will just say Buster and Ryan, I mean, for just being put in the position a couple months prior to Harvey, I think you passed your test.
Darn it.
I mean, trying to put together meal plans that fed multiple departments. I don't know what the total numbers of you have fed every day, 75 to 100 potentially, but 3 different plans, 24 hours. I mean, y'all did a great job for coming together in a relatively short period. You did a good job. I think you're there to stay for a little bit longer. Go work harder next time. And the dispatch center, like I said, it was amazing. I mean, we've heard it time and time again. But Melissa and her crew put together that triage system that really, we didn't see it in some ways as far as how overwhelmed they were. The crews out in the field probably saw it because of everybody coming out of their homes looking for that help. But they were overwhelmed. I mean, you had, 3 dispatchers at one time working every console. I mean, I don't know what your total number of phone calls you received. A lot. But they came up with a triage system that was very effective. They tried to ask questions, trying to prioritize which citizens needed the higher priority rescues and which ones, not in a negative way, could wait a little bit longer. Obviously, the medical situations, the higher priority PD ones went first, but then a lot of times by the time they got there, the citizens were either already gone and been rescued by somebody else. But that's the thing, there was a lot of things that happened behind the doors that made things a whole lot easier. I mean, I know it brought a sense of calmness to the EOC when that triage system put in place. And they were able to calculate the numbers every day. Okay, we're at 100 today. We've checked 75, so now we're down to 25. just to show that we were able to make progress as well. So hats off to you as well, you and your staff, Melissa, for the job that y'all did through the dispatch center. So let's talk about areas of improvement. Through city departments, comments that get made for areas of improvements of staffing handled differently regarding recall during incidents. I think there was some going into it. What we looked like we had was accurate. But the thing is, you always anticipate potentially what you're going to need, but not know what you're really going to have. You know, I think more after the storm is when we really had the staffing concerns as far as needing more people to come in to help out with, in the EOC, to help out with messaging, to help out in some of the different areas, and we couldn't get them here because of the floodwater. Nobody anticipated going into this that we were going to get 35 plus inches of rain and people were going to be flooded in. But I think it's opened the door to allow us to look at these possibilities and think potentially maybe different when we do staff recalls. Reevaluate preparedness plan for staff. I mean, I know some individuals were here, could not get home as far as getting their stuff prepared, and even things that I know people lost vehicles in the flood. So just trying to come up with a different plan of action to try to make sure we incorporate and include everybody to prevent things of loss of personal property, or making sure we allow the time off for them to go home and prepare enough time to get back. And it was also suggested that not only focus on department preparation, but citywide as well. More or less, when your department's ready to go and everything on your checklist is good to go, if you've got staffing available, let's reach out to other departments and say, hey, I've got 2 individuals that we're done with our checklist. What can we do to help you out? Because not only is that going to help bring us together as a city, but it also helps us, makes us look like we're looking out for one another. We're finished our stuff. We're not just sitting here at, wherever, what department, trying to continue on business. We're actually done with ours, and we're going to see what we can do to help each other out. It's that team concept and that team building part of it. City staff, the number one comment that did come back was training. Training. I mean, I think that goes with any incident, any event. We always look at it, and one of the feedbacks you get, positive or negative, is what can we do to train more? Specific type of training outside of NIMS. Harvey really opened the eyes and said, okay, we need to be trained. If we're going to send people in the floodwaters, what can we do training-wise? We're already working on that. We're putting together, we're going to be sending individuals to swiftwater type flood training where we're going to have individuals actually certified. We're not going to just stop at level 1. There'll be a Tech 1 crew, there'll be Tech 2, and then we're even going to go as far as sending people to be certified as boat operators. Not only does that help the rescuers out in the field a little bit of a sense of relief, because now they'll have maybe some different ideas and a different outlook on how they approach the citizens or how they conduct a rescue. But at the same time, if something was to go south, okay, the first thing any lawyer is going to say is, let me see the type of training you have with that crew. Doesn't mean that because we're trained, it's going to make us free and clear of any type of litigation, lawsuit, or anything of that nature. But it's better on the city standpoint to say, well, we've got people that are trained. This is what happened. This is their training that they've had. So we're looking at that. We're also looking at different safety and situational awareness. I mean, in that floodwater, I don't know, but I guarantee you, there was cars underwater. You don't know what you're getting off into. But not just that, but like ants on top of the water. Just being real open-minded and observant. So we're looking at different types of safety classes, situational awareness classes. I know the county's working on these different categories as well, just to help everybody out in Harris County. Specialized equipment. This was one that was also brought up as well. What can we purchase? What can we need? What do we need? What do we need to look for as far as the specialized equipment? Obviously, after any incident, any event, you're going to throw all kinds of things. If we had this, if we had that, if we had this, we had that. Equipment-wise, we'd have made things different. Not going to argue that one bit. But we have to go back and look, too. We have to really take a step back and make sure we're not making knee-jerk reactions when it comes to specialized equipment. We'll talk more on that later on. Address and number visibility. Now, I know, and I don't know the complete ordinance on that, but every house is supposed to have addresses visible somehow, some way. Well, what we found out was, especially during Harvey, was we have addresses on homes posted above the garage, on a column outside the door, but then some of them were either not visible because of covered, or they were in a flower bed, their address number was on the flower bed, or they were painted on the curb. When you got a foot of water, when you got 3 feet of water, and you're going to a specific address, you know, it's easy to say if it's not there, try to figure out the numbering scheme on the street to try to figure out exactly where you're at. But just trying to see what we can do as a whole in educating the public on the importance of making sure that their address numbers are visible at all times, the best that we can, to help reduce, because if we got crews looking for addresses out there because they're not visible, that's just potentially time wasted when they could go to that address, rescue that individual, get back, and then be going back out to another rescue or whatever the situation may be. Customer service. I put this on there because we did have some comments that were made about there might have been times that customer service wasn't at its best. I can understand being tired, crews being tired out in the public, working long hours, day and night, and coming across people that don't want to come out, don't want to go. But we just have to make sure we remember that we have to remind our folks that no matter how bad the situation is for us, how long we've been here, think about the other person, how bad it is for them. No matter what the situation is at hand, we still have to we still have to have our best customer service game on, the best that we can. Because, like I talked earlier, keeping that sense of calmness amongst us helps provide that sense of calmness to our citizens as well. So not just, and granted, people take things differently in the public. You may get a little loud with somebody because you're trying to get them to hurry up because you know the intensity, you know what's going on, and they may take you in a bad way. But just got to remember, we're here to provide a service pre-storm, during the storm, and post-storm as things continue. And then on-site resources available for employees to decompress, reduce emotional stress during the storm and even after the storm. It was suggested, can we make ways to where, people start using, open up gyms like in the rec center, or if, fire department's gym's open, we're not using it for staffing. To where on their downtime, they want to go in there and decompress and work out a little bit, or just do something to get their mind off of it. But more importantly, even after the storm, setting up debriefing, maybe bringing in counselors to help individuals talk if anything's bothering them. Like I said, we had a lot of people that were in stressful situations. I mean, when you're here working, you're seeing with this, but then you also have personal stuff going on, it builds up. And if we just keep capping that off and we don't ever let it go and go talk to somebody, it's only going to hurt us physically and mentally on the inside, and then it could affect us in our job later on. But if we open up that opportunity to provide that, it might help reduce some type of emotional stress as well. Again, under EOC operations training, more specific position type training, the county's starting to open up more position specific, like for logistics, they're starting to have specific classes for that. Planning, they're having specific classes for that. Finance, so they're really opening the doors to more specific position type training. Documentation training, the NIMS forms, we're looking at more training on that, just training on how to properly fill out those forms. Everything that we can do early on, everything that we can do as far as completing the forms the right way the first time helps out. Finance helps out the city, EOC, as things progress on. Because when you turn everything in to put together the IEP, if something's not completed, then we've got to go back to you to get you to fill it out. We've got to make sure that if you're responsible for filling out those forms, that you allot yourself some time to get those forms completed and make sure you return them back in to the appropriate individual as we move forward. And we'll talk more on forms here shortly. Consistency in our operations as far as functionality of them. Where this comes into play is our daily lingo. How we talk on the radio for fire, how we talk on the radio for law enforcement, how we talk on amongst each other is one way as far as how we operate daily. But when we get into NIMS, when we get into an EOC function, and we start assigning like task force, boat rescue 1 or boat rescue 2, we've got to make sure that we're using that across the board when we're communicating, saying, versus individual radio members. I understand we may not be used to individual radio members or not knowing who's on there, but if it's our branch that we're over, if law enforcement's branch is over the rescue operations going on, then they ought to know boat rescue 1 has these 3 individuals on it, and boat rescue 2 has these individuals on it. So just making sure that when we are in an EOC activation, we are in an emergency situation, that we utilize the functionality across the board. When we don't use the functionality, it has a tendency to cause a little bit of chaos and cause some confusion. Resources, vehicles, equipment, volunteers, CERT teams. We really need to make sure that we're sitting back and we're looking at what resources we have here in the city. What are the resources that we have available to us that we didn't think about during Harvey that we could have used? What resources can we look at contracting out into the future that might be beneficial to us, setting up those contracts early before we have those versus not having to worry about making purchases. Equipment, we talked about the floodwaters, and we mentioned life vests, and we had tons of life vests. They're all kid sizes, so they're not necessarily all beneficial to the adults out there. So the equipment of that nature, we may need to look at investing in 10, 15 adult size vests for each crew going out, not only for the rescuers that are out there wearing them, but for the citizens as well, trying to make sure that they have the protection. Volunteers, we've seen how our volunteers work out in the community. They come in, not only do they help man the EOC, help man the donations, but we had volunteers for months during the flood resource center that was open. The volunteers are there. People are willing to volunteer in times of need. It's just formulating a plan to make sure that we are able to reach out to see if those are available when we need it, and also be able to make sure we capture everybody that comes in so we can in return thank them for their time and their effort during that time. CERT teams is just one example of another resource that's out there. I know we've talked about individuals with boats in the city. There are CERT teams, which are community emergency response teams, to where they can come in. Like if we had a wind event and lost a lot of trees, CERT teams are trained to go through and help with like small scale type urban search and rescue. We're only limited by numbers. If you can have CERT teams come in and help out, that just helps double and expand our resources that we have on the ground. And they're familiar with them, so they fit right on in to the scope of it. Operational period changeouts. The reason why this was put on here, and it happens, it's hard to, but when we change from one operational period and the relief crew comes in, it's hard to walk away and go lay down, go eat, so forth. I'm guilty of it, okay? I'm not sitting here just preaching, y'all. I'm guilty to that. It's hard to walk away. But we've got to remember, when we're not up and working, we've got to take that time to decompress. We've got to take that time to relax, get some sleep, get something to eat the best that we can, so that way when it's our turn to go back in to the game for the next operational period, we're ready to go. Finance. The one thing that I know I talked to Terrence about, and it wasn't anything negative, and he's already working on preparation for the next one, is documentation. Documentation is the key, especially after any incident or event for finance. NIMS forms, making sure that they're completed. The workforce documentation and the equipment used is a key on finance side of things. Through that discussion, like I said, nothing negative, but through that discussion, the forms just didn't get filled out appropriately and correctly. Whether it had been, some individuals were told how to do it and the information never got passed on, or people getting confused, or people just getting rushed, lazy, whatever it is, but we've got to make sure we take that time to fill out those forms the proper way, so that way we're not having to go back, Terrence and his crew's not having to go back and try to backtrack. Oh, on September 14th, y'all used this. Terrence, it was like 2 months ago. I'm not 100% sure. Well, see what you can do for me. It just makes everybody's life easier if we do everything the best that we can up front. Paycom was a new experience, I think, for a lot of us when it came to doing time. We had some hurdles, but we were able to overcome those hurdles. But again, I think there was information through Paycom how to mark this time compared to how to mark that time, and that's where I think a lot of the confusion came in, because different people were told different things on Paycom. Bottom line, communicate necessary information to staff to start off on the same page. So maybe we have to sit back and say, okay, beginning of every operational period, or somehow, some way, how do we blanket the information out? When we make changes, how do we blanket that information out to everybody that's involved to try to eliminate any type of issues, and not just in finance, but everybody across the board. Finance is just a good example because of with them still dealing with Hurricane Harvey and the paperwork. And I know Terrence has made comments that he's already working on things for the next one, not that he's projecting it or predicting it, but for the next one. So hopefully we're farther along than we are currently. So how do we move forward? Obviously the next step is training. We're going to gather a collection of classes based upon your request, based upon what you said. We're going to seek out to the county. We're going to see what we can do to provide either in-house or send it out for you if you're available to go and to these specific types of training. We're going to practice. We're going to put together tabletops. As far as bringing everybody together, whatever the scenario may be, that's what we'll go with. But on top of that, we may bring in just do documentation training and not worry about EOC functions. Just look at how do you fill this form out, going over that type. City events. City events are, to me, a perfect opportunity for EOC staff, big or small, to utilize EOC. We're already, with our city events, PD's getting involved with their tactical medics as well, so we're kind of already setting some type of small modulated EOC up with the command staff and so forth. But if there's an opportunity there, putting together a small modified IEP just provides a game plan for everybody that's involved. Even if you only have 5 or 6 involved, it gets you practice on doing the NIMS forms, and then you don't have to worry about typing up the agenda per se. You can just hand somebody an IEP, and this is the layout for that city event. Not that we have a lot of city events, but there are several city events in which we can very easily have something go down. 4th of July, is one that's a big event in the city. Holiday in the Park is another big event in the city that has multiple departments involved. And we have a lot of community that shows up too. My biggest fear with it, if we don't practice on some of these city events, is we're going to be involved in the city event, something's going to go south of the city event, and then we're already going to be behind the 8 ball. If we had some type of plan in place, put something in, we're at least a step ahead, potentially, if something was to go south. Communication between staff members along with information being relayed to departments following our meetings. As far as that, like I said, it kind of goes back to what we talked about with finance. Just make sure the information gets out to everybody and everybody's on the same page. If you're told one thing today and you're told something different tomorrow, just stop for a minute and question it. Go back to who you found that out, and let's question it to help streamline that communication. The other thing on communication is, and I'm not a big social media person, but what I gathered in the EOC is we have a lot of different social media hubs that is utilized by many different departments in our city. So to me, we need to figure out what the best course of action is getting that information out to the public to where we minimize the number of hubs that are used, or somehow or another copied from one to the next so all the same information is being distributed across the board. On that line, operational briefings should be done as a whole. What we did during Harvey is we had our operational briefings in the EOC. That information from there went out, and the different branch directors from the different from law enforcement, public works, and fire took it to their staff before they started and relayed that information. The downside of that is you get the information in this meeting, well then when it goes out to everybody else, there's that tendency for not all the information to be relayed or information to potentially be changed, not on purpose, but get detoured a little bit, and now you've got potentially individuals working in different directions. So the best thing to do is figure out, okay, let's pick a common ground. Everybody reports here if we're shift changing at 7, everybody shows up for a meeting at 6:30. That's all the boots on the ground, EOC staff, everybody coming together. Your operations section chief provides the operational briefing, and then everybody starts off on the same page. Here's the same message across the board, and we're ready to go to work at 7 o'clock, or whatever the time frame is that's designated. Education for our citizens, I think Harvey provides an open door for us, an opportunity to have community type meetings, to get out there and what can we do to help prepare them. I know we provide information on the website, but what can we do to bring them in? Bring in outside vendors, not to sell things, but help provide tips, like with Centerpoint. What can we do as far as informational wise? What can we do as a city? This is what things that we're doing. These are things that you can do. On top of that, that will also not only benefit the citizens, but it can also benefit us as well. I mean, if we practice some preparation when we're preaching, we can be better prepared when we're away from our house. EOC operations familiarization, just making sure that we're all familiar with it. There's changes that are coming. Our designation, Chief Leal, just recently retired. Somebody's going to be filling his spot. Whoever that is, we don't know, but whoever, as changes take place, if things come up, Buster's not available, or Ryan's the man, well, who's Ryan's backup? Just making sure our depth is there within our departments in those different positions, because we just never know when the next incident is going to happen. Talked about social media, I'm not going to talk about that again. Resources, we need to brainstorm. We need to work together as a city versus individual departments on resources. What resources do each department have that we can utilize, or what do we need? If we feel like we need something, let's discuss with other departments to see, hey, bounce the ideas off. So we're making sure that we're purchasing things that are really going to be beneficial to the city. Making a list of wants versus needs, and then obviously obtaining our agreements early as well. We start thinking now for the next incident. I'm going to tell you, the meeting I went to back in January, the 5 major meteorologists just in our area predicted another Hurricane Harvey. They said this winter, which we're okay because we're in spring now, we're safe, but within the next 5 years, another Harvey. So, not to scare anybody, not to throw it out there, but I'm just telling you, they're predicting another Harvey within the next 5 years. So, now's the time to make sure we're starting to plan, we're starting to look at agreements, looking at all of our agreements, and what do we need to do to fine tune. So in conclusion, take a lot of positives from this incident. I don't take anything that I've seen, heard back from anybody as a negative. I look at everything as constructive criticism, and how can we take that criticism and move forward with it? How can we build upon that to make things better for the next time? Because if we don't, and we have another Harvey a year from now, all right, and we're in the same boat we were before Harvey, what's that going to do as far as outlook on our city? You just did the same thing. You didn't do anything to advance. You weren't prepared for whatever, just like for Harvey. So we got to make sure we're continuing to move forward. Take all these positives we're looking for. Learn a lot as well. If we can't walk away from that incident, can't walk away from today or everything through our experiences with Harvey that we're going to continue on with and learn from, we're not doing our job as public servants to this city. We can learn a lot, and I promise you our citizens are learning a lot as well. Not only preparation from them, but they're really learning a lot what the city has to offer them. Because, we've opened the door in many different ways to make it convenient, to make it easy for our citizens to be able to move forward with the recovery portion of it. Together, we'll continue to grow, without a doubt. We have to make sure we maintain togetherness. We have to communicate amongst one another. Even though we work for different departments, we have to make sure that Public Works is constantly communicating with Fire, and Fire is constantly communicating with law enforcement and HR and Parks and Rec and Finance, and not just about day-to-day, which day-to-day helps too because it just builds relationships, but at the same time, for preparation for the next one. Not only train for today, but train for tomorrow as well. We can train today, you can go to a class today, we've got to take that information and see how we might be able to utilize that tomorrow if we're called upon or if it's needed. We have to make sure we're able to openly, hey, you know what, I went to a training 3 weeks ago, this is what we did. Let's give it a shot. That's what forward thinking is all about. Forecasting is to make sure that we are thinking ahead and trying, even if it's something we've never done before, it might work. Law enforcement, to me, is a good example when it comes to chases. You have things that you're limited to, but sometimes you have to get creative in order to end the chase. I watched one this morning, it went off about 2 hours. Okay? And things from a lay person, it's like, just go do this, go do that. Well, there's certain things that they can't do, but there's times that you have to get creative and think outside the box to make things happen and continue to move forward. And share our knowledge to make us more versatile. You might have this wonderful, great knowledge, but don't hold it inside. Because when the next incident comes, you may not be there. Somebody else has to step up and take your spot. So if you share your knowledge, hey, let me show you what I've got going on here. Let me show you the layout. Let me show you my book where stuff is at. This way, if Buster's not here today, but Ryan's here, Ryan can go straight to where Buster's got his, secret book or whatever he's got, and grab his U of H cap that he wears during his or Alabama hats, whatever he's got on, and he's ready to go. Ryan's not lost. He's able to step up and take on. But not only that, if you go to training, share that knowledge with others as well. It's only going to make us better. And last, great job to everybody. Now let's get ready for the next one. Because it's not a matter of how, it's just a matter of when. Hurricane season's coming up, starting in a couple months. And this occurred during the height part of hurricane season, later part of August, early part of September. So we've got to make sure that we are prepared. But again, I tip my hat to each and every single one of y'all and tell you and your staff, good job. Any questions?
No questions for Deacon? Hey, Deacon, thank you very much. That was excellently done and well prepared and well presented. Thanks everyone in the room for what you did to help Deacon prepare and set the way forward. I think we're doing what we need to be doing to accomplish the improvement objectives that Deacon listed there, and we'll continue to do that. How we communicate, how we message, both internally and externally, is going to be key. What this community is going to want to hear in our messaging more than anything else for the next several years is, what are you doing to mitigate flooding? We got a lot of information here. We got a lot of information from the Flood Hazard Task Force that just finished their report. Council heard and accepted on Monday night. That's a 450-page document that, with Cheryl's help and with Deacon's help and with your help, with Siobhan's help, we're going to need to wrap our hands around and make sure we summarize, condense, message. And again, this is going to be something that's going to be a priority for years to come. So again, thank you everyone in the room. Thank you, Deacon. Great job. Are we done? All right. Thank you all, everybody.